What would you do if you suddenly discovered that an entire family living in a remote colony had vanished without a trace? Imagine a cold autumn day in 1911. The wind rustles through the yellowed leaves of the trees surrounding a small estate in eastern Galicia, then still part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The air is filled with the scent of smoke and damp earth. The local postman, Adam Kowalczyk, is heading as usual to the remote plot of land belonging to the Grytsenko family, but something seems strange to him today. The gates, always locked with a massive padlock, are now ajar. Deep down, he feels that this is an invitation to a terrifying discovery that will change historians' understanding of what happened in these parts more than a century ago. This story, based on archival documents and eyewitness accounts, will tell you about a mystery that local authorities tried to conceal for many years. If you're interested in such historical investigations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because we uncover the darkest secrets of the past. Adam Kowalczyk had been working as a postman in the small Galician town of Grytsenko for almost 15 years. During this time, he had learned every path, every house, and every family in the district. A special place in his postal route was occupied by the Grytsenko family's colony, located approximately 4 kilometers from the town in the depths of the forest. The Grytsenko family had appeared in these parts about 7 years ago, buying a vast plot of land from a bankrupt Polish nobleman. From the very beginning, they kept to themselves, rarely appearing in town and hardly communicating with the local residents. On that autumn morning in 1911, Adam, as usual, collected the mail for the remote estates and set off on his route. For the Grytsenko family, he had several letters from Kiev and Lviv, as well as a small parcel wrapped in thick brown paper. Approaching the Grytsenko's estate, Adam felt an unusual silence. Usually, even from afar, one could hear the sounds of work, the sound of axes, the voices of workers, the barking of guard dogs. But today there was complete silence. Something is not right here, Adam thought, approaching the high wooden gates. Usually, he had to knock for a long time before one of the servants opened a small viewing window to receive the mail. But today, the gates were slightly ajar, and while tracks leading deep into the territory were visible on the ground. Adam, overcoming a growing sense of anxiety, pushed the gates open and entered the courtyard. The first thing that caught his eye was the absence of usual activity. The yard, usually lively, with workers carrying firewood, feeding livestock, or repairing tools, was empty. The tool shed was open, and inside, things were scattered haphazardly, as if someone was hastily looking for something important. He slowly moved towards the main house, a massive 2-story building made of dark wood with small windows and a pointed roof. Climbing onto the porch, he knocked on the door several times, but no one answered. The door was not locked, and after a moment's hesitation, Adam decided to go inside. The air in the house was musty and cold. In the fireplace, which usually burned even in warm weather, only ashes remained. On the table in the living room stood several cups with remnants of tea or coffee, and next to them lay an open book, as if someone had just been reading and was suddenly forced to interrupt their reading. "Mr. Grytsenko, Mrs. Grytsenko?" Adam called out, but his voice only echoed off the walls of the empty house. He walked through the living room into the dining room, then peeked into the kitchen. Everywhere there were traces of a hasty departure. Unfinished food, abandoned dishes, open cabinets. In the bedrooms on the second floor, the picture was the same. Scattered clothes, open suitcases, as if packing had been interrupted halfway. Adam went back down to the first floor when his attention was drawn to a half-open door in the corner of the living room. He had never been to this part of the house before and did not know where this door led. Perhaps it was Mr. Grytsenko's study or some kind of storage room. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and anxiety, the postman approached the door and peered inside. What he saw made his heart beat faster. Behind the door was a narrow staircase leading down to the basement. Damp air and a faint but distinct smell of something strange rose from there. Adam knew that he should leave immediately and report the empty house to the local authorities. But something was pushing him forward, forcing him to take the first step down the stairs. As he descended, he felt the temperature dropping and the air becoming heavier. It was dark in the basement, and only a dim light penetrated through a small window under the ceiling. When Adam's eyes adjusted to the darkness, he saw something that would forever change his life and become the beginning of one of the strangest investigations in the history of Galicia. The basement was much larger than one would expect from the size of the house. It extended far beyond the foundation, going underground. Along the walls were numerous shelves filled with books, scrolls, strange tools, and containers with unidentified contents. In the center of the room was a large stone table, similar to an altar, with symbols carved on it that Adam had never seen before. Circles and lines forming a complex pattern were drawn on the floor around the table. But the strangest thing was in the far corner of the basement. There, partially hidden behind a wall projection, was a door. Not an ordinary wooden door, but a massive metal structure with numerous locks and latches. And this door was open. Adam, overcoming his fear, approached closer. Behind the door was a narrow corridor going deeper underground. Cold and a strange smell wafted from the corridor, a smell that the postman could not identify. A mixture of dampness, mold, and something else, something unnatural. Realizing that he had discovered something beyond the ordinary, Adam decided not to go any further. He hurried up the stairs, left the house, and, without closing the gates behind him, quickly walked back to town. 2 hours later, he was standing before the chief of the local police, trying to explain what he had found on the Grytsenko estate. According to the police report compiled that day by Commissioner Tadeusz Wisniewski, the testimony of postman Adam Kowalczyk caused serious concern among the authorities. Wisniewski immediately organized a police detachment to inspect the estate. When they arrived at the scene, the house looked exactly as Adam had described, abandoned in haste with signs of chaotic packing. But what interested the police most was the basement and the metal door leading to the underground corridor. Following this corridor, the police discovered an entire network of underground rooms extending over a considerable distance. Some of these rooms looked like living quarters, others like laboratories or workshops. In one of the rooms, a library was found with hundreds of books in different languages, many of which were devoted to occult sciences, alchemy, and ancient religions. But what they found next did not go into any official report of that time. This information, which was only recovered decades later thanks to the personal diaries of Commissioner Wisniewski, discovered by his grandson in 2003, revealed that in the farthest room of the underground complex, the police found something that made even the seasoned Commissioner Wisniewski lose his composure. It was a large, round room with a high, domed ceiling. In the center of the room was a stone structure resembling a well, but instead of water, it contained a thick black substance, slowly pulsating, as if alive. Around the well were 7 stone chairs arranged in a perfect circle. In his diary, Wisniewski writes, "What we discovered in the dungeons of the Grytsenko estate contradicts all laws of nature and science. I cannot entrust a full description of what I saw to paper, as I fear that this knowledge may fall into the wrong hands. Let me just say that, after consulting with representatives of the church and the authorities, it was decided to seal the underground premises and never mention their existence in official documents. What was the Grytsenko family, and why did they create this strange underground structure? To answer these questions, we will have to go back several years and trace the history of this mysterious family. According to the archives of the city of Kiev, the Grytsenko family came from the educated class. The head of the family, Mikhailo Grytsenko, was a well-known scientist specializing in archaeology and ancient languages. At the end of the 19th century, he organized several expeditions to Egypt and Mesopotamia, from where he brought many artifacts and ancient texts. His wife, Alina, came from an old family, connected, according to some sources, with occult practices. The couple had 3 children: the eldest son, Alexander, the middle son, Victor, and the youngest daughter, Maria. All the children received an excellent education and, as contemporaries noted, possessed extraordinary intellectual abilities. Alexander followed in his father's footsteps and became an archaeologist. Victor studied medicine and chemistry, and Maria showed interest in linguistics and ancient languages. In 1904, Mikhailo Grytsenko suddenly left his academic career at Kiev University and, together with his family, moved to a remote area of Galicia, where he acquired a large plot of land. The official reason for the move was the deterioration of Mikhailu's health and the need to live in a more peaceful environment. However, as documents found in the Kiev archives show, the real reason may have been quite different. A few months before the move, Mikhailu Grytsenko returned from an expedition to North Africa, where, according to him, he had discovered an ancient temple dedicated to a forgotten deity. Among the artifacts brought from the expedition was a strange cubic object covered with unknown symbols. In his notes, Mikhailu called this object the key and claimed that it could open the door between worlds. After moving to Galicia, the Grytsenko family began to live extremely reclusively. They hired several local residents to work on the estate, but these people were only involved in external affairs, tending the garden, cleaning the yard, delivering supplies. They were not allowed inside the main house. The only exception was an old servant named Hryari, who had come with the family from Kiev and apparently enjoyed the complete trust of the owners. One of the former workers on the estate, Stepan Koval, said in an interview given to a local newspaper in 1925, "Yes, the Grytsenko family was strange. They hardly went outside during the day, preferring to work at night. Strange sounds often came from the basement, either singing or prayers in an unfamiliar language. And once, when I stayed late to finish repairing the shed, I saw the whole family go out into the garden under the full moon and stand in a circle around a strange stone altar that they had set up among the trees. They were singing something and making strange gestures with their hands. The next day, I was fired, told that my services were no longer needed." Other residents of the area also noted strange things associated with the Grytsenko family. Some claimed to have seen strange lights over the estate at night. Others spoke of unusual animals appearing in the forests after the family's arrival, creatures unlike any known animal. These stories, of course, could simply be superstitious fabrications, but they added to the mysterious image of the Grytsenko family. In the period from 1904 to 1911, parcels and letters regularly arrived at the Grytsenko estate from different parts of the world: Egypt, India, Tibet, Peru. According to postman Adam Kowalczyk, some of these parcels were unusually heavy or gave off strange odors. Sometimes rare guests came to the estate, people speaking different languages, dressed in strange clothes. These visits were always short, and the guests never appeared in town. What was happening behind the closed doors of the estate all these years? According to the diaries of Mikhailu Grytsenko, discovered in the underground premises, the family was studying an ancient artifact brought from Africa. Mikhailu believed that this artifact, the Klyak key, was part of an ancient technology that allowed the opening of portals to other dimensions. In one of the entries from October of 1909, Mikhailu writes, "We are close to a breakthrough. Alexander has deciphered the last part of the text on the key, and Victor has created a chemical mixture that, according to ancient recipes, should activate the artifact. Alina and Maria have prepared the ritual. Tonight, we will make the first attempt to open the door." Further, the entries become increasingly strange and difficult to understand. Mikhailu describes visions of other worlds, indescribable creatures, and voices sounding in his head. He mentions that for the full activation of the key, an anchor is required, a physical place where the boundary between worlds is thinnest. In his opinion, such a place was located precisely under their estate, which was the reason for choosing this remote area in Galicia. In the last entry, dated October 12, 1911, a day before the discovery of the empty estate by the postman, Mikhailu writes, "Today we are making the final attempt. All preparations are complete. The key is activated and placed in the center of the circle. If all goes well, we will be the first people in modern history to cross the threshold between worlds. If we do not return, let this serve as a warning to others. There is knowledge that humanity is not ready to accept. What happened that night in the dungeons of the Grytsenko estate? Where did the whole family disappear, along with their faithful servant Hryari? There are still no definitive answers to these questions. The official investigation conducted by the Austro-Hungarian authorities quickly reached a dead end. The report compiled by the Imperial Inspector Konrad von Hoffmann stated, "The Grytsenko family appears to have hastily left the estate for unknown reasons. As no signs of violence or crime were found, the case is classified as a voluntary disappearance." The family's property is confiscated in favor of the empire. However, as recently declassified documents from the Vienna archives show, the authorities were much more concerned about what was discovered on the estate than the official report suggests. A secret memorandum addressed personally to Emperor Franz Joseph spoke of inexplicable phenomena and a potential threat to imperial security. A special commission consisting of scientists and representatives of the church conducted a thorough investigation of the underground premises and the artifacts found there. The commission's findings were so alarming that a decision was made to completely classify all materials related to the Grytsenko estate. The entrance to the underground premises was sealed with concrete, and the estate itself was burned down. The area around it was declared a prohibited zone under the pretext of conducting military exercises. But even these measures could not completely hide the truth about what happened on the Grytsenko estate. In subsequent years, local residents repeatedly reported strange phenomena in the area of the former estate. Unusual lights, sounds unlike anything known, and even figures appearing and disappearing among the trees. In 1927, a local forester, Jan Kozlowski, while passing through the forest near the former estate, came across a strange sight. According to him, he saw a man standing in the clearing where the main house used to be. The man was dressed in old-fashioned clothes from the beginning of the century and seemed to be looking for something on the ground. When the forester called out to the stranger, he raised his head, and Kozlowski saw with horror that the man's face was distorted. His eyes were asymmetrically placed, and his mouth was stretched into an unnatural smile. Before the forester could do anything, the strange figure dissolved into the air. After the Second World War, the territory of former Galicia passed to the Soviet Union, and all mentions of the strange events on the Grytsenko estate were finally erased from official history. However, in the late 1980s, during Perestroika, when many previously classified archives became available to researchers, the story of the Grytsenko family once again attracted attention. A group of scientists from Kiev University, interested in the fate of their former colleague Mikhail Grytsenko, organized an expedition to the site of the former estate. By that time, no trace of the buildings remained, only a forest-covered clearing with rare remnants of the foundation. However, using old maps and plans, the researchers were able to determine the location where the entrance to the underground premises should have been. After several days of excavation, they discovered a concrete slab covering the entrance. With great difficulty, the slab was moved, opening access to the underground corridors. Inside, everything was covered with a thick layer of dust, but otherwise, the premises looked as they had been described by witnesses at the beginning of the century. Strange laboratories, a library with occult books, ritual halls. But when the researchers reached the last room, the very one where the well with the black substance was located, they were in for an amazing discovery. The well was empty. There was no black substance in it. Instead, a strange object was found at the bottom, a metal cube with symbols, identical to the description of the key in the diaries of Mikhail Grytsenko. The head of the expedition, Professor Vitaly Kravchenko, decided to take the artifact for further study in the university laboratory. This decision, as subsequent events showed, had tragic consequences. On the night after the expedition's return to Kiev, a strange incident occurred in the university laboratory where the artifact was stored. According to the security service report, around midnight, a loud sound resembling an explosion was heard in the building. When the guards arrived at the scene, they found the laboratory in complete disarray. Broken instruments, overturned furniture, as if a hurricane had raged inside. Professor Kravchenko, who was in the laboratory at that moment, had disappeared, and with him the artifact had vanished. In the following days, a series of strange events occurred in Kiev. Several people claimed to have seen Professor Kravchenko in different parts of the city, but his behavior was strange. He did not recognize acquaintances, spoke in an incomprehensible language, and seemed disoriented. Then, reports began to come in about people resembling other members of the expedition, although it is known for certain that they were in other places at that time. The most disturbing was the report of one of the students who worked with Professor Kravchenko. According to him, late in the evening he met a man who looked exactly like the professor, but when the student spoke to him, the professor turned around, and the student saw with horror that his face was distorted in the same way as the forester Kozlowski had described in the 1920s. asymmetrical eyes, and unnaturally stretched mouth. Before the student could run away, the professor grabbed his hand and uttered a phrase in a strange language that sounded like, "They are turning. They are returning." All these events attracted the attention of special services, and soon a decision was made to close the investigation. The official version stated that Professor Grytsenko had stolen a valuable historical artifact and disappeared in an unknown direction. All expedition materials were confiscated, and the participants were obliged to sign non-disclosure documents. However, as often happens in such cases, it was not possible to completely conceal the information. One of the expedition members, a young graduate student named Andrei Lisovsky, did not believe the official version and continued his own investigation. He collected all available materials about the Grytsenko family and their strange research, and also established contact with the descendants of witnesses to the events of 1911. Lisovsky presented the results of his research in a monograph, The Secret of the Grytsenko Estate, on the Border of Worlds, which he planned to publish in the early 1990s. However, just a week before submitting the manuscript to the publisher, Lisovsky suddenly disappeared. His apartment was found in perfect order, without any signs of a struggle or hasty departure. An unfinished note lay on his desk. "I understood what happened to the Grytsenko family. They did not disappear. The entry broke off there. The strangest thing about Lisovsky's case was that his computers and all paper research materials remained untouched. The police, who began investigating his disappearance, discovered an extensive archive of documents related to the Grytsenko family. Among these materials was a small diary that Lisovsky had apparently kept in the last months before his disappearance. The entries in the diary became increasingly alarming and paranoid. In one of the last entries, Lisovsky wrote, "They are watching me. I see them out of the corner of my eye. Figures resembling people, but with something wrong in their appearance. They appear in the crowd in the subway, outside the window of my apartment. Yesterday, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a man standing in the corner of the bedroom. When I turned on the light, there was no one there, but I am sure it was one of them. There are more and more of them. They are looking for something or someone." In another entry, Lisovsky mentions a theory that he developed based on his research. "I think that the key found by Mikhail Grytsenko really opened a portal to another dimension, but it was not a one-way process. When the Grytsenko family crossed over there, something crossed over here. These creatures, they look like people, but it is only a mask. They are studying us, preparing for something. I fear that the return of the key to Kiev activated some process that they started back in 1911. The last entry in Lisovsky's diary, dated the day of his disappearance, contained only one phrase, "I met Grytsenko. He came to me." There were no more entries. The case of Andrei Lisovsky's disappearance remains unsolved. His name has been added to the long list of people somehow connected with the mysterious Grytsenko family who have disappeared without a trace. The police investigation reached a dead end, and over time, the case was closed due to a lack of new evidence. It would seem that the story ended there. However, in 2010, it received an unexpected continuation. Andrei Lisovsky's niece, Alina, who inherited his library and archives, decided to complete her uncle's work. Being a historian by education, she methodically analyzed all the materials he had collected and continued to search for information about the Grytsenko family. One of Alina's most interesting findings was the diary of the servant Hryari, which was discovered among the papers confiscated from the estate after the family's disappearance. This diary somehow ended up in the KGB archives, and after the collapse of the USSR, it was transferred to the National Archives, where it was found by Alina. Hryari's diary provided a unique insight into the events that took place on the estate through the eyes of a person close to the family, but not fully initiated into their research. Hryari described the strange rituals performed by the family, their obsession with the key, and the changes he noticed in his masters as their research progressed. "Mr. Mikhailu is changing every day," Hryari wrote in one of the entries from May 1911. "His eyes have become deeper, as if he is looking somewhere far beyond our world. Sometimes he says strange things in a language that I do not understand. Mrs. Alina has also changed. She has become quieter, often sits for hours staring at one point. The children, especially the youngest Maria, seem afraid to go down to the basement. Yesterday, I heard Maria crying in her room, repeating, "They are watching me through the walls." In an entry from September of the same year, Hryary describes even more alarming observations. "Today I saw Mr. Victor in the garden. He was standing under the old oak tree and looking at the rising moon. When I approached him, he did not react, as if he did not hear me. I touched his shoulder, and he slowly turned around. His face was strange, as if his features had shifted slightly. His eyes had become larger, and his mouth had stretched into a smile that did not seem human. He looked through me and said, 'They are already here, Hryary. They have always been here, we just did not see them.' Then he blinked, and his face returned to normal. He seemed to remember neither our conversation nor what he was doing in the garden." The last entry in Hryari's diary was made in the morning of October 13, 1911, the day the family disappeared. "Something important will happen tonight. Mr. Mikhailu said that all preparations are complete. The key is activated. At midnight, the whole family will gather in the main hall of the dungeon for the final ritual. Mr. Mikhailu says that we will see what no one in modern history has seen. I am afraid, but I cannot leave the family that I have served all my life. If we do not return, may God have mercy on our souls." Based on Hryari's diary and other documents, Alina Lisovska was able to reconstruct the events that probably occurred that night on the Grytsenko estate. According to her theory, the family actually activated the ancient artifact, which led to the opening of a portal to another dimension. But unlike their expectations, the portal worked both ways. Something or someone from another dimension crossed over into our world, taking the form of the members of the Grytsenko family. These creatures, retaining the appearance of people, but possessing a different nature, continued the research of Mikhailu Grytsenko, but with a different goal: to find a way to open a more stable and permanent portal between dimensions. Perhaps this was the reason for the strange events in Kiev after Professor Kravchenko's expedition discovered the key. However, as Elena notes in her conclusions, this theory, although it explains many of the oddities associated with the Grytsenko case, still remains only a hypothesis based on fragmented and not always reliable sources. What really happened to the Grytsenko family? Where did they disappear to? What was the mysterious key? These questions still remain unanswered. Official authorities do not recognize the existence of any anomalous phenomena associated with this case, and the place where the estate was located is now part of a natural reserve, closed to the public. But the most alarming aspect of this story is that cases of people disappearing who are connected with the investigation of the Grytsenko family's mystery continue to this day. In 2015, journalist Serhiy Morozov, who was working on an article about the Grytsenko case for a Ukrainian publication, disappeared without a trace. In 2018, a student and historian, Anna Kovalchuk, who was researching occult practices in Galicia at the beginning of the 20th century and was interested in the history of the Grytsenko family, went missing. The most mysterious case is that of Elena Lisovska herself. In 2020, after several years of research, she published the book Shadows of Another World, The History of the Grytsenko Family, in which she detailed all the available facts and her hypotheses. The book aroused considerable interest in scientific circles and among lovers of paranormal phenomena. Elena gave several interviews and participated in a television show dedicated to mysterious disappearances. 3 months after the book's publication, Elena herself disappeared under strange circumstances. According to her colleagues, in the days leading up to her disappearance, she looked worried, said she was being watched, and mentioned strange figures she saw in crowds of people with incorrect faces. On the day of her disappearance, Elena was supposed to meet with an unknown informant who, according to her, had new information about the fate of the Grytsenko family. She went to the meeting, and no one has seen her since. In her apartment, a laptop was found with an open text document containing only one phrase: "I understood. They are among us." The police investigation yielded no results. No traces of a struggle or signs of a forced abduction were found. Surveillance cameras recorded Elena entering the cafe where the meeting with the informant was supposed to take place, but did not record her leaving. The informant was never identified. Elena Lisovska's case has been added to the list of unsolved disappearances associated with the mystery of the Grytsenko family. This list continues to grow, which makes one wonder, should the secret that the Grytsenko family tried to uncover really remain a secret? And what will happen if the secret is revealed? In 2023, more than 100 years after the mysterious disappearance of the Grytsenko family, an anonymous envelope arrived at the National Archives of Ukraine. Inside was an old photograph dated 1911. It showed a family of 5 people, a man, a woman, and 3 children, standing in front of a large wooden house. On the back of the photograph was the inscription, "The Grytsenko family, estate in Galicia, June 1911. The photograph would not have been of particular interest if it were not for one detail. All the faces in the photograph were blurred, as if they had been deliberately erased or as if they were in motion at the time of filming. Only one face was clear, that of a young girl standing apart from the main group. It was the face of Elena Lisovska, who disappeared 3 years ago. Is this photograph a fake, a sophisticated hoax, or proof that the boundaries between worlds and time are more permeable than we think? And what will happen if someone else finds the mysterious key and tries again to open the door that the Grytsenko family opened more than a century ago? These questions remain unanswered for now. But one thing can be said with certainty. The story of the Grytsenko family and their mysterious disappearance continues to attract the attention of researchers of paranormal phenomena, historians, and ordinary lovers of mysteries. And perhaps someday someone will be able to fully unravel this mystery and find out what really happened in that remote estate on a cold autumn night in 1911. But will this knowledge be a blessing or a curse for the one who receives it? And is humanity ready to know that beyond the door that the Grytsenkos opened, there really is something else, something that watches us, studies us, and maybe prepares for something? What if they are already here among us? What if the person sitting next to you on the subway, or the passerby you glimpsed on the street, or even someone you know is not quite who they seem? What if something completely different is hidden behind the familiar features, something that came from behind that door that the Grytsenkos opened? Perhaps we will never know the full truth about what happened in that Galician estate, but one thing is certain. Some secrets are better left unrevealed, and some doors are better left unopened, because you never know what might enter through that door when you open it, and you never know if you can close that door. And if you ever find yourself in the forests of eastern Galicia and stumble upon the remains of an old foundation among the trees, do not linger there for long, and by no means look for the entrance to the dungeon, because there are places where the border between worlds is especially thin, and there are creatures that are just waiting for someone to open the door for them again. And remember, if you see a person with an incorrect face, with eyes located slightly asymmetrically and a mouth stretched in an unnatural smile, do not look them in the eyes. Just leave. Leave as quickly and as far as possible, because this person may be one of them, and they may know that you recognize them. Or maybe it's all just a scary tale invented to entertain lovers of mysteries and the mystical. Perhaps, but when you next meet a stranger on the street who looks at you a little longer than they should, or hear a strange whisper in an empty room, or notice movement out of the corner of your eye where no one should be, remember the story of the Grytsenko family and their mysterious disappearance, and ask yourself, what if it's true?